Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Tony and Sarah Unscripted. We want to talk about last weekend, or this past weekend, I should say. I would just I want you to start talking about how you felt when you walked in to the space, and then you can, just go ahead.
Okay.
Because I'm just so excited.
Okay. So, are we going backwards a little bit?
Let's go backwards a little bit.
All right.
Actually, we have some new followers, which I'm super excited about. They don't know how we met.
Right.
So why don't we start from like the beginning?
The beginning. Do we have enough
when
time
your
for
life
that?
changed forever? Okay.
Yes. So the beginning would be probably about, 3-4 years ago now, maybe.
Probably 4.
When Cameron came out to us as transgender. And so I say this before, I still don't know how I got your name. I still don't remember or know who.
Really?
No, I just can't remember.
I didn't know that.
Because it was one of those things where it was sort of like an underground thing. Like, because the groups that you ran were very
private.
Very private. So somebody gave me your name. I reached out to you, and then you reached out back to me, I think the next day.
Procrastinator.
And we got on a Zoom call a couple of days later.
Remember that?
Yes. So that's how we met. And it was basically a parent not knowing what to do, where to turn, like all, just very lost.
I think it's important to mention how you introduced yourself to me, because I think that's that's what shocks me when I think about our first interaction. And I said, "Hey, how you doing?" And you said,
"Hi, my name is Sarah.
And
I'm a Catholic Republican conservative."
And I almost fell off my chair, but that was scary for me a little bit. I was like, "Am I going to be able to help this family?"
But you must have had other parents like us, other families like us.
I've had yes, and some have helped their child, and some have not. So it was like, but I remember it. I remember that like it was yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, my husband Joe was off the camera, wouldn't get on the camera. He was kind of behind the scenes, as they say, just listening to what you were saying. And my friend Lynn, my best friend Lynn,
who I swear. Okay, Lynn, hold on for a second. Lynn says I met her.
Yes.
Okay, Lynn, my apologies. Okay, are you coming to the? Okay, forget it. I will meet you again and remember.
Yes. Well, she was actually in the room as well when we were talking to you.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Just finding out about that.
Yeah. But anyway, so that's kind of how you and I met. And then I came to the groups that you offered, and Cameron got involved in different things, and sort of that journey began with you alongside us.
I remember I was doing this art event in North Haven. And this is another moment when I think about it, I almost start crying. So, I might get emotional here. And it was over. A lot of kids showed up, and I walked to leave, and you were sitting in your car.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked over to you, and you were like, yeah. I said, what's going on? Well, I hope he makes friends. Because he really didn't have that type of friendships after he came out and started his transition. And yeah, and man, did he make friends.
He did. And still to this day, he is very, very close to one of the girls that he met that night. They're very, very close. So
yeah, so cool.
And that's all it takes, right? I mean, before he came out, he had tons of friends and was popular and all that stuff, and then everything changed. So I know he felt very lost and very lonely. And when we went to that night in North Haven, he met quite a few kids, and I feel like they kind of all understand each other, and it's almost an easier way to make friends because you already have something in common with them, right? So keeping that in mind, from that journey, I remember sitting down with a friend of mine, Barb Hargraves, who I said to her, I want to do a Guilford Pride. And we were in the back of a restaurant in the summertime a few years ago. And she said, okay, I'm in, whatever you need. And I was like, okay. So we just kind of went with it. And we started, you were in the first group that we had, and we had got a committee together. And we had that first Pride. It was about over 3 years ago now, because the fourth one is coming up in a couple of
Wow.
months. And it was very successful. But in order to have that, you needed to have a nonprofit sponsor it. So I just said, okay, well, instead of finding a nonprofit, I'll just create a nonprofit.
Why not? Why not?
So I did. I started up Alex, Acceptance, Love, Equality, and Zenacious. And
I love
Zenacious.
Zenacious.
It's funny because so many people are like, that just doesn't make any sense. And I think that your meaning is wrong. And I was like,
What?
no, the Zenacious means eager to learn, eager for change, which made perfect sense,
Makes
particularly
perfect
for me, right? Because I had so much that I needed to learn about this new community that
And
I was.
X is hard.
And X is hard, my gosh. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of X word for X. But anyway, so from that, we kind of sponsored a queer prom, and then we got together with North Haven Pride, and we sponsored a second queer prom with them. We sponsored a talk with you for your author talk.
That was great. That was
It
great.
was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And then we kind of tried to do some sort of educational things and noticed that was a little bit more harder, right? You'd get the same people that would come to these presentations, and they were all the people that already supported
Yeah.
and already had no issues with what we were doing. They maybe wanted to learn a little bit more about the transgender community. So we started just to think about, like, what are we going to do? And always in the back of my mind, I thought it would be great to have a space, because I go back to that time with Cameron when he was in North Haven and
Yeah.
at that art thing, and with very like-minded kids, and he instantly made friends and connections. And I think about those kids and how hard it might be for them to find that connection in their own school, right? It's hard when you don't play sports, because you automatically, in sports it's great. If it's a team sport, you're automatically on a team and
Right.
you automatically have things in common. Even in theater, it's great, right? Because you're with people that are like-minded to you. And so I think that sometimes kids don't have that comfortable place. They're not quite sure where they fit in. And if they're not academically minded, sports driven, or anything like that, they just feel like maybe they don't quite fit in. Particularly where we live, which is in the shoreline, which is a fantastic area to live, and I do love it.
And
But
there's nothing for them on the shoreline.
Right.
Closest Pride Center or anything like that, a welcoming space, is in New Haven.
is in New Haven, right? So, and how it happened was one of my neighbors reached out to me and said that she would like to put Alex in as a contender to get a $25,000 grant from her company. And so, if you remember, I contacted you and we were like, this is amazing. Got her all the information she needed. And instantly I thought, well, if we did get that, we could open a space. And so that was in December.
Yeah.
And the space just opened this past weekend,
Who
which would
does
be
that?
I know. February 14th we had our open house.
It's a beautiful space.
A beautiful space. Very small, but just and cozy, I should say. So small and cozy, right? So it's just perfect for what we want to do with it right now. And I think the hardest part right now is just getting the information out there about it and letting people know that it's open and what we're doing there and what we'd like to offer. And I've spoken to a bunch of couple of different therapists who have all sort of said the same thing, which is that this is a space that's needed. And it's not just for the queer community. It's also for kids that just don't feel that they belong.
Yeah.
And beyond that, I know that I've met a few adults in the queer community who have sort of said, listen, we miss getting together and having coffee talks or just moments where we can get together and talk about what's going on.
Yeah.
And so now we're kind of providing this space for adults. We're looking to provide space we're doing tea times. So this would be for either transgender youth 13 to 17, or the other side of that will be 18 and up. And that's just within the transgender community. There is a whole bunch of struggles that they deal with on their own, right? That are so separate from anything that I would know. And beyond the fact that they have to deal with the terrible political side of things, as a trans female, I think you want to learn things maybe like how to dress, if I want to wear makeup, that kind of stuff, which is probably it just may not come naturally, or you may think, oh, I'd like to sit with somebody who can kind of show me how to
Yeah.
do that, or what might suit me, or how.
Or just sit with community.
Yeah.
Just sitting in a space where you don't have to explain who you are. You don't have to be afraid of who you are. I mean, as a trans person myself, I remember the first time I was in a room with other trans people, and there wasn't that many trans men. There were really almost, I think I was the only trans guy in the space. And I remember saying to myself, man, this is great, but same church, different pew type of thing. Like, how can I always dressed like a dude, so I didn't need to. I always wore a tie. I was so butch. When I was in the lesbian band that I was in, when I identified as a lesbian, we were playing at this event, and I remember when we were leaving, I heard this woman say, "I thought it was a lesbian band. Who's the guy?" And that was prior to
Oh, my
transition.
goodness.
But just offering this space, and when you walk into this space, for everybody who's listening, there's peace. There's just that sense of, I'm safe here. You get it as soon as you walk into the space.
Yeah.
And I'm just super excited, but I'm so proud of you because it just happens because it's supposed to happen. Like the reason why you said, oh, in December, this past December,
Yeah, I know.
I think we're going to do a space.
Yeah.
And then February 14th, the space opens. That's unheard of.
Yeah.
And the universe or God or whoever anybody believes in knows when something is needed, it needs to be there. And I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I do think everything just sort of aligned at the right time. And it was pushed by this neighbor of mine saying, here, you can. I would like to see about getting this grant. Now, we got some of the money, not all the money, but it was just enough for us to say, okay, let's just take this plunge and do this. So it did kind of all fall together at the right time. So this, so the space is going to be used for different art groups and support groups. We're thinking of opening it as well for local schools if there's kids that just want to come down and hang around and sort of sit on a very comfortable beanbag chair and read some of the books that we have. We've got a lot of different books there if they want to just draw or write or color or take a breather, listen to music, whatever they kind of want to do. And then for them not to worry about, well, how do I look? What am I wearing? Is someone going to make fun of me?
Somebody to call me by the wrong name or pronoun.
Right. Yeah. So, and I remember watching Taylor Swift, this whole documentary that they did about her and the Era tour that she did. And one of her dancers... Did you watch that?
I did not watch it.
Okay.
I watch it, though. I'll watch it.
You should watch it. I will say I'm not a huge Taylor Swift fan. I think she's amazing and fantastic.
Isn't Joe, though?
Yes.
Your
Joe
husband?
is.
Yeah.
Yes, he is. But she's fantastic with what she's done. What an incredible businesswoman. But she had one of her dancers was a male who, you could tell he liked to sort of dress more feminine at times, and he had longer hair. And I using the pronoun he, maybe he doesn't go by he, I don't quite know because I don't think they ever spoke about that. But what he did talk about was how difficult it was for him growing up in the dancing world because he wanted to do a lot of what the females were doing. And it was very hard for him to find a studio that would agree to that or that would allow him to just express himself however he wanted to. And it was difficult, very difficult for him. And I suppose the dancers all get excited if they're chosen to do this song. I think it's Ready for It.
Yeah.
And he was chosen to do it. And he was beyond excited. And he just spoke in tears, through tears of how much this meant to him, that he was going to be allowed to express himself however he wanted and he wasn't going to be judged. And he could truly be who he has always been, but rarely allowed to show. And what an incredible talent. I mean, he was just so talented and just this huge smile on his face. And he was so grateful to Taylor Swift. And I don't think that, I'm sure she knew what she was doing for him, but I also, from what I gather from her, she was probably like, of course he can do the dance.
And if you've never felt that feeling of not being able to be yourself, and I think people need to understand that, like, being a trans person myself, I know what it's like to hide who I really, really Yeah, it was, I mean, I was never able to express fully who I was. And if you've never been in that situation, man, when you get to do that, your life changes. It's life saving
Yeah.
when you can be in a space. And we know this for the youth of our community, that when they're in a space, even if it's a few hours a week, it saves them. It
Yeah.
saves them, when they're
Yeah.
around people and they can. Every time I'm talking about this, and and when we talk, we see a story in our brains, and I just picture Cameron laughing with all his friends and leaving his 16th or 18th birthday,
18th.
his 18th birthday. He walked out of that pub with a bunch of friends, and I leaned over to you and I said, "Do you remember when you in the parking lot in North Haven?
Yeah.
You were worrying about if he was gonna have friends or not."
Right.
But it's life saving. So Alex really is providing a space that's really going to make a big difference in a lot of people's world. Because when your kid is sad, you're sad. When your kid is struggling, you're struggling.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
And it's not just about opening a space for the queer community, which of course that's what this is, but it's also a space, even if you're not queer,
Yeah.
and you feel unwanted, if you feel like you don't belong. Even as adults, how many times have we walked into spaces and you're like, oh gosh, I don't really fit in with this group, and you're uncomfortable. So we never truly get out of that. We just probably learn where to walk into and where we're going to feel wanted and needed and like we belong. But it's something that I think we all deal with. And sometimes I remember even a few years ago, I was on a trip with a few girls, and I knew most of them, but not very, very well. But there were things about them that I just felt like I didn't belong, and it was very uncomfortable. And I say a few years ago, this is probably going back 8 or 10 years ago, but still,
Okay.
I was probably in
Well,
my
that's a
40s.
few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was in my early 40s, and still in my early 40s, I felt like not good enough.
Yeah.
I felt like I just didn't belong. It was very uncomfortable for me. And I thought, why would I put myself in that situation?
I think people. I mean, it's hard. Like, it's hard to make friends when you're an adult too. I think it's harder. Because, a lot of people just isolate. Nobody, I don't, like, prior to transitioning, there were bars I used to go to. I was a club promoter. I was around a lot of people all the time, and not anymore. I mean, there's really no place where I feel comfortable going, and sometimes you drag me out. Like the other day, you're like, just come down to the space. And it makes a difference when you're around, just to be around other people's energy.
Yeah.
And I'm glad the space is open, not just for the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
That it's a space for everyone is welcome.
Yeah. Yeah. So super excited about it. We're going to have running a couple of groups this week, which is the week of February 16th. And then really what we're looking to do is what does the community need? What do these kids need who are not into sports, who are not into academia, who are not even maybe even to theater, and they just can't find their space? Like, what do they need? Once we hear back, that's what we want to hear back. Like, when should we be open? What groups do they want? And not, as I said, not just the youth as well. The young adults. Given that Cameron's 18, most of his friends now are young adults, really.
Yeah.
And as you know, we had an event at Fired Up in Brantford about a month or so ago. 20 young adults showed up, and it was heartwarming to see. And it reminded us of the need of just maybe this kind of fun event where people could go and be whoever they want and not worry about snickering in the corner, or not worried about someone getting mad or upset, or, as you say, wrong pronouns, wrong names, or anything. Yeah. And I would love to have heard the story of every single person that was there, because some of them I would look at and I was like, I wonder what their story is, or I wonder why they felt this was the right place for them.
There was somebody that showed up that they started my group when they were 12 or 13, and they were there. And they came up to you afterwards and said, thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
And so many people came up to you and Cameron and said, thank you for doing this. Thank you. We got to do another one.
Oh,
because it was just super successful.
Yeah. So it just shows you that, again, it's not just the youth, it's the young adults, and it's also the older adults, right? So we're trying to hit all ages. And we will see it'll organically narrow down to what it's supposed to be and what's needed right now. But right now we're just thinking, let's open it to everything and everyone and all ages and see who we can help
Yeah.
and who we can, and it might just be a few people that want to get together and knit while they talk, right?
Yeah.
Or just have, a coffee and a few snacks while they talk about their fears, right? And I think right now, particularly the parents of transgender individuals, we also going to be having a parent or caregiver group.
That's great.
And as a person who, when Cameron first came out to me a few years ago and living where we live, it was a lonely existence for me because I knew what I needed to do. And you were obviously very, very helpful to me. But to deal with what I was feeling was hard. And I didn't quite know if anybody else felt the way I was feeling. Because I almost didn't want to show or tell how I was feeling because I felt like that would show that I was not being supportive. And that's not the case. I could be supportive of Cameron and loving of him, but also having my own difficulties with what I was dealing with. So I think it's important to create a space where caregivers and parents and families can say, of course I love my child and of course I'll do whatever I can. However, can we just talk about what this means?
Yeah.
Can we talk about how difficult this may be? Can we talk about how all of my dreams and thoughts and everything that I thought was going to happen is going to happen in a different way now, and how we how we accept that. And so I wanted to make sure that there was a space where these families could come and be like, what the hell?
No, I'll tell you that it was so important when the group started for me in 2008. The parents were sitting outside in their cars while the teens were inside. And one day I went outside. I said, listen, I can get you a room in the building. I think you might have something to talk about. 4 parents started.
Yeah.
And, I would, after this, I'm saying, like, don't go by the numbers, because a lot of people start support groups and then people don't show up, or 2 people show up and they're like, I didn't care if one time one kid showed up and I took him to Starbucks and we had coffee.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. And then you walk into these rooms and the parent group, at one point, there was like 40 parents that showed up. Yeah. So it will build on its own. It will become what it's supposed to become.
Right.
And I love that. I hope you're facilitating the parent group.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. So, you have you're facilitating, you have the space. Now everything else will just, the sense of peace and love and compassion that space has already, and then you going in and you facilitating this, people are going to want to be there.
Yeah.
Because people aren't around that.
Right.
We're not around that energy of compassion and love a lot,
Well, particularly now, I think that as parents, all we're seeing and hearing a lot of is the damage that we're doing to our children, the irreparable damage.
Yeah.
And you're seeing a lot, or I'm seeing a lot because I'm on the wrong side of something, detransition stories or whatever they call them now. And they're pushing those out now a lot with their agenda, right?
Yeah, of course.
And I won't say that I won't read through these and think, this is nothing like Cameron's story. And that's the thing, is some of these, are they what do they call them? Detransitioners?
I always say change in gender journey, but I don't like the word detransition.
Yeah. But some of their stories most of the stories that I've read are completely different from Cameron's. And then you read the comments and you read how parents should be, sent to jail and the parents are at fault for all this. And then it goes to the doctors are at fault. And,
let's just really take a moment here, because we hear a lot about, I'll use the term detransition. It's less than 1%,
mm-hmm.
but we never ask why. And I can tell you that in my experience working with this, this community, that I've had a couple of kids who had said, you know what, I can't do this. I can't, because they weren't getting support. They were getting bullied at school. So they stopped their transition until they were old enough to do it on their own. Listen, we know, especially you and I, we've sat in the pain.
Yeah.
I remember that call, that FaceTime with Cameron, like it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I remember The only thing I said to him was, "What do you need?" Okay. And it changed. You know what I mean? It's that simple.
It was that simple
that
for
simple.
him because he hadn't spoken to anybody that knew what he was going through or
Yeah.
what he needed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a whole other podcast to talk about, right?
Yeah.
But the whole point is that as parents, we struggle a lot.
Yes.
And then we're being questioned by our decisions. And then we're told we actually can't do what we know is best for our child. So
Yeah.
this space is for that.
Yes, I
them
love
as
it.
well.
I love it.
So
I love
super,
it.
super excited. What we'll do is, I'm sure, link the website, link the email that you can send an email to, and have, if you have any questions about groups, if you have any ideas of what you would like to see us do, please send us an email. We're open to hearing lots of different things right now.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see where this goes. I will make a prediction right now on this podcast.
Oh, boy.
that we will grow out of this space in 6 months.
All right.
I'm telling you.
Yeah. All right. What do they say? Your mouth to God's ears?
My mouth to God's ears. I guess. I don't know. My mouth to Buddha's ears. No, I'm kidding.
I know. Someone's ears.
No, this is. I'm really proud of you. I'm proud
Thank
of you.
you.
And I can't wait to see this grow. I mean, again, from December to February, who does that? Who does that? You know.
I
And
get
then,
something on my mind.
Wait. Pride's coming.
Pride's coming May 17th. Nope, that's Cameron's birthday. But May 16th, which is a Saturday. Rain date is May 17th.
Okay.
And out of the 3 years that we've done this.
Don't say it.
Okay.
The first year it did not.
I can tell you right now. Yes, it did. We used the rain date. I can tell you right now that if we have May 16th as a day of our, I can tell you that it will rain on May 16th, 2026.
And listen, one year it was raining right over the Guilford Green because when I left the block down, it wasn't raining. I swear.
Right.
But here's the deal, everybody. If you're listening, start praying to the weather angels. Okay.
That's right.
Make it a beautiful, sunny, breezy, not too breezy for the 10th day.
Yeah.
But some not hot. Just nice.
It's just good stuff. That's
Just
all
good
we
stuff.
need.
That's it.
All right.
Yeah.
That's it.
So thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.